Welcome to the session on Veeam Certified Engineer. I'll be talking a little bit about the program and I'll give away a few study tips. My name is Rasmus Haslund. I work for Aero ECS in Denmark. I work as a VMware certified instructor and as a Veeam certified trainer. Just a quick view at what we'll be talking about today. I'll do some quick overview on the exam policies. I'll be going over some of the exam blueprints, a little bit what can we expect to see on it. I'll do some study tips, and then we'll see a little bit on how you can become the next Veeam Certified Engineer. So the first thing you would want to do, obviously, will be to attend the class. But once you finish the class and you feel comfortable, you've been doing some good studying, you want to go ahead and book the exam. Now the exam is going on at the Pearson VUE exam testing centers. They'll be all over the place, US, Europe, and whatnot. So the ways you can actually go ahead and book it is to go online on the Pearson website, just pearsonvue.com/Veeam. You'll have to sign up for an account. It's not like with, for example, some of the VMware exams where there is some validation. Did you do the class? If you didn't, then you can't do the exam. You can actually book the exam and pass it even though you didn't actually attend the class. However, even if you do pass it, you don't actually get the certification until you've also attended the class. So how can you go ahead and book it? You can do it online. That's probably the most convenient part. But I've seen sometimes some of the testing centers, they don't allow online booking. So what you could do instead would be to go ahead and call them. And when I say them, I mean the testing center, and make the arrangements directly. Or you could call Pearson VUE and do the booking. Some people might think, I tried to do this already, it wasn't possible. That's because previously it wasn't possible to do that. But fortunately now there was some changes, and it is possible now. One thing, when I was doing the exam myself, that tripped me up a little bit is that you have to book it 24 hours in advance. Okay, so you can just, let's say your daily work is some consultant or something, and suddenly you have this cancellation. So thinking, oh, excellent, today I'll go and do the exam. Oh, wrong, because you have to book it 24 hours in advance. So make sure that you sort of have that perspective in your schedule when you're actually going ahead. Now, if for some reason something should go wrong and you fail the exam, there's a retake policy, so you have to wait 48 hours before you can schedule it again. Once you're actually in the testing center and you're doing the actual exam, you'll be getting questions from a pool of 200 different questions. You'll be getting an actual 50 questions out of that pool. So there's a chance, I guess, that if you go ahead and do the exam again, at some point you'll maybe get a few that you already saw once. The exams questions will be coming from the course material. So when you're doing the actual training, there's approximately 10 actual modules with different content. The questions will be based off those modules. So it could be questions like data protection, it could be deployments, it could be different licensings on product editions and things like that. And for these 50 questions, you'll be allocated 60 minutes for actually passing the exam. Should you be doing the exam in a country that's not having English as the native language, then you will be allocated 30 additional minutes. You can see that when you actually come to the testing center, and then you'll be able to see this. I don't think it's actually clearly visible online if you're booking the exam. So what kind of format should you expect on the exam? It will be multiple choice, so you'll have one single correct answer, and it could be maybe 5 different possible answers. It could be multiple choice. You have to select maybe 2, 3, 4 correct answers out of a list. And there will be some scenario questions where you'll see maybe some setup. You have to analyze, okay, what kind of components am I seeing here? And then you have different drop-downs to categorize what are the options that I'm seeing here and how is this working. So one of the things I've seen in my days as an instructor is people will do the training, they'll be preparing for the exam and thinking, okay, I'm good to go. They go ahead and they do the exam. And great, if they pass, that's fantastic. I always love people passing the exams, that's the best. but it might unfortunately happen like it did for me when I did the first exam. You might fail. So then you have to think, was it because I'm just having an off day? Was it because I had unfair questions? What was the cause here? And so for some people, they decide, I'll just reschedule it as soon as possible. They won't do any additional studying and try and do the exam again. Now, just repeating the same thing over and over and again and expecting a different result isn't necessarily, in my opinion, the best strategy on passing the exam. So what I did was, I tried to do the exam. I realized that even though I actually thought I knew quite a lot about the product, as it turned out, there was maybe some technical detail somewhere that I maybe didn't fully understand. So I had to go back and do some studying, reading in the materials. And then I came back, and unfortunately this time I had 10% more on the score. So I went from an 84%, and I needed 85, and then the second try around, I managed to get 95%. But that's only because I could see there was some areas during the questions where I could sort of feel, okay, I know how to make this work, but how it actually works under the hood. Okay, maybe I didn't really completely understand that. So how can you go ahead and read up on these weak areas? Well, one of the tips, obviously, will be to go through the official courseware. So when you're doing the class, you get a nice textbook, you get a nice lab book. I would recommend reading thoroughly through both of these books. Okay, because even though you're using the software all the time, how many times do you continue adding in additional repositories, additional proxies, and so on? For most customers, this is something that some consultant will be doing with them, or maybe they did it on their own, and then that part is just completed. Then they're running all of the backup jobs and things like that. So if you go ahead and go into some menu in the GUI, can you actually remember what kind of options you have there? So it might be that if you go through the lab book again, you can sort of get some reminding on what does these parts of the GUI actually look like. Obviously, you could also just sit and mess around with the production environment. Well, that's probably not a fantastic idea. Another option is to go to the official help center, or you could also call it the online documentation. This is really a fantastic resource. It was really, really helpful for me when I was doing my studying in a combination with the official courseware. Some of the additional resources would be the official user guides. There is one user guide for vSphere and an additional user guide for Hyper-V. Now, one of the things a lot of people tend to forget, especially during the exam or during the class, is while the product is really, really good, there are some few differences with what it actually does on the vSphere platform and on the Hyper-V platform. And so that's something that might trip you up during the exam if you're not really clearly understanding what can it do on each of these two platforms. So how can you actually go ahead and become the certified engineer? Well, I think once you go ahead and you do the class, you go ahead and you do the exam. Hopefully you've done some thorough studies, and then you pass the exam. So what could be the motivation here, except obviously becoming the legend in the community here? Well, working as a partner, perhaps, it might be that you want to be able to present yourself for Veeam professional services, that you can show your customers, obviously I'm certified on this, but what about if you're like a customer? Then you're thinking, is this a good credential for me? I would think so. While it's still fairly new, it's still really interesting, because who wants to be the guy who says, yes, I'm really happy with this backup software, and then when the day comes and you actually have to restore something, you don't actually know how to do it because you never tried to do it. Okay, at least during the class, you're being set through all of these different steps. You're trying them all out. Obviously, you can always try to do some test restores, and I would heavily recommend that, but it's not all who has a different separate environment where they can try and do a complete disaster recovery in the event that something went down. One of the, in my opinion, biggest advantages of actually becoming the Veeam Certified Engineer is that you get priority access to support. Yeah, so you get a special phone number, you call up on support, you type in your personal code, and then the phone will say something like connecting you to the on-call engineer. So you're bypassing the entire queue, you'll be getting directly to something like third, second level support. Now, it might be that you're thinking, hey, I've called support before, and the person who picked up the phone was able to help me just perfectly. And that's just true. I've also had that experience quite a lot of times. But still, it might be that one day you're sitting in this critical spot, and then it's nice to know that you do have the access to go straight to second or third level, should the need arise. So the last thing I'll wrap you up with is, if you feel this is something you might be interested in, you can go ahead and do the challenge to yourself, thinking, hey, I already know everything, but how well do you actually know? Do you know how to use it, or do you know how it actually works? So you can go ahead and try a free practice exam online. It's just web-based. You can go ahead, just a pool of 50 questions to knock yourself out with, and then you can see how it goes. I think the current average on this exam is approximately 35%. And on a real exam, you would need something like 70% to actually pass. So it appears that there may be some work still to be done out in the community. All right, I think we're almost out of time, but if somebody has some questions afterwards, I'll be here. Feel free to come up and ask me. And it was a pleasure to be here.